Alright, guys, welcome to Same Circle Wrestling. This is our SummerSlam special, the season finale of Season 2. And we're talking NXT TakeOver Brooklyn and SummerSlam, obviously, which we just watched. So we're going to start with TakeOver because we feel that it was a marginally better show.
I'd say a little more than marginally.
Yeah,
Considering the pile of dog shit that WWE just vomited in our laps for SummerSlam, I think anything would have been better.
yeah.
I will say, like, they gave us like 2 hours of solid takeover action, and it went like 2.5 hours. So I'm like, NXT TakeOver was an amazing show based on the time they told us like we expected. It was a great opportunity to see what's going to be forward in the WWE playbook.
So NXT TakeOver essentially just started with Breeze and Liger, which was a pretty decent way to start it off. Like a relatively medium hyped match. I expected Tyler Breeze to take it, and that's not the way it went.
No, like Liger went out, and that was the thing. It was an even back and forth match. And I'm pretty sure between Bill, Seth, and I, like, we all assumed Tyler Breeze was going to carry it throughout the entire match, and what we ended up being was Jushin Thundering the pinfall for Tyler Breeze. That was an even fucking pinfall, like, no question your side or their side. That was a pretty good way to start off the show and let us know that, TakeOver was not going to be a simple, here's our roster versus any other roster. That was a simple way of saying, this is our way versus anything else. We got a show to put on.
Yeah, I think it kind of kicks off like a little bit of a feud there, and it's pretty obvious that Tyler Breeze is going to be, up there in NXT for the next, year or so. If he doesn't get called up before that. But we also saw a lot of guys at TakeOver that we didn't think would stand out and are obviously going to be a big part of NXT, because the last couple months we've really just been seeing tag teams, which was the next match. We saw the tag team championships being defended with Blake and Murphy and the Vaudevillains, which was interesting because the Vaudevillains ended up having their third member, Blue Pants, come out, which was like, she came out to a pretty decent pop, and I thought that was really awesome because now they can set up, if they want to, they can do a Blue Pants and Alexa Bliss feud.
Well, I think the overwhelming part of that feud is the fact that the Vaudevillains were able to pull from within. They didn't have to sit outside and say, we're going to pull a diva you've never heard of. They pulled in Blue Pants and were able to take their existing feud and kind of mesh it in with something else, which is great from, the Vaudevillains angle. Like, they're not the overwhelming outside feud. They don't have so much of people who are going to join them and even out the fact that they're Bliss to go against. And I just think that was like the perfect opportunity for them to bring in Blue Pants and say, this is what we have to offer, and this is exactly what we need to, win moving forward.
Yeah, I think really what it did was they sort of canceled each other out, and it made it a level playing field for those two teams. And the Vaudevillains come out on top, so we got a new NXT Tag Champion. So I think that's really cool. And I think we all knew that the Vaudevillains would take it eventually. But really the question was, like, if Enzo and Cass were going to take the belts before the Vaudevillains do. But I think realistically at this point it seems like they're just going to go to the main roster before any of that happens.
Well, exactly that. As you said, Enzo and Cass have been on main roster shows for the past, 2 or 3 months, just based on the fact that WWE promotion. So I feel like Enzo and Cass are going to be like the next big tag team to join into WWE. And I feel like leaving them out of this group long enough, which is 2 or 3 months, what you do is you would give them the kind of springboard they need to make their point known on the main roster. And, in involving them in the simple feud that was between Blake and Murphy and the Vaudevillains, what you see is an opportunity for Enzo and Cass to just immediately springboard onto the main roster and make a difference, because that's a minimal roster, tag team wise, and that makes perfect sense for them to spring in and make an immediately difference that we're going to see in 2 or 3 months moving forwards.
Yeah, we were just talking about it before the show that it's a relatively shallow tag roster on the main roster, so to bring in a team like that, or to have to put Bray Wyatt and Harper, or Reigns and Ambrose into that picture is almost too much. So I think bringing another tag team, especially from NXT, is the way to go. We also saw, I thought what was really cool was Ty Dillinger and Apollo Crews. Apollo Crews debuting. Ty Dillinger looked really, really good. I think he gained a lot of respect from this match, especially after getting, being in squash matches for the last, few months on NXT.
His Perfect 10 gimmick, or whatever you want to call it, his Perfect 10 gimmick works really well. Especially with NXT. Like, you're looking at a small group of people who are going to buy into whatever gimmick you have to offer. And, the simple, I'm the Perfect 10, and he has already the hand movements to get the crowd, or whoever it is, along with him. That's perfect. Ty Dillinger is doing great. Outside of his individual match against Apollo Crews, Ty Dillinger is doing enough to make him a solid singles competitor in NXT.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they need there, too, is more guys that'll be singles competitors. And Apollo Crews looked really, really good, and I thought that was a great debut for him.
Exactly, especially outside of his flips that he had to offer. Like, Apollo Crews gave probably 2/3 of his gimmick into, the flips and the launches he did to make himself seem like a viable singles competitor. I want to see Apollo Crews, what he has to offer, next week and 2 weeks down the line on NXT. And I think he is in the perfect position against Ty Dillinger to kind of give those issues up in the next 2 or 3 weeks to let us know what we really have to offer.
Right, and with Thunder Liger coming in, you got Breeze, you got all these possibilities for different feuds, so the singles division is coming back up. And, like we said, it has been a lot of tag teams. So now to see these singles guys really getting their gimmicks and starting to fit into place is nice to see. Because NXT's been, just squash matches. And it's been relatively boring up until this point. But we saw Baron Corbin and Samoa Joe, which was interesting because Baron Corbin's been just kind of rolling through everybody. And now we see Samoa Joe. I mean, the only match that Baron Corbin had was the one with Rhino, and even that was somewhat of a squash match. So you got Samoa Joe, who ends up taking this, which I think is good for Baron Corbin because he does need a loss, realistically, because of the fact that most of the fans don't like him because of the fact that he's just been running through everybody, and they haven't had anywhere to go with it.
Yeah, Baron Corbin needed a loss, especially against Samoa Joe, but he needed a loss. If we're going to look at the grand scheme of things, Baron Corbin needs probably a reset. Baron Corbin's been going against basically jobbers in the last 2 or 3 months. Guys that he can just walk into the ring and run over very quickly. But all of a sudden he's got Samoa Joe. That is his one opportunity to prove to people he has more than 2 or 3. And obviously Samoa Joe wins that match against him and Baron Corbin. But Samoa Joe leads on to the fact that Baron Corbin, if you want to prove yourself in NXT, you need something more outside of what you've been giving us. And I think that's what it takes for Baron Corbin to show us, his second third of his moveset, to kind of show us that he is a legitimate fighter inside of NXT. And he's not going to get leapfrogged over the other guys who probably have a more legitimate cause to, being the next NXT champion.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is they pushed Baron Corbin really hard, and I think they thought that they had plans for him, and they just didn't. and he was just kind of floating around, treading water, and they didn't want to give him any losses because they wanted him to be this guy that's sort of unstoppable, and they went way too deep with it, and now they had to take Samoa Joe and say, hey, we got to hand you a loss and, sort of reset you. And, like we said before, it's another guy in that singles situation where, you can throw him into possibly an NXT title picture, somewhere down the line. Or, even a number one contenders match or something where he loses. But I think building Baron Corbin is definitely important at this point. I want to move on also because I want to talk mostly about SummerSlam, but we had Bayley and Sasha Banks, which was a phenomenal match for the NXT Women's Championship, and I was really, really surprised at Bayley's performance. And after the match, I thought that was really cool that they sort of broke kayfabe and were all sort of in the ring together, like Becky Lynch and Sasha and Charlotte and Bayley. It reminded me of the Clique.
The fact that that match went more than 25 minutes showed the fact that Triple H, Stephanie McMahon, people who are in the, I guess, upper echelons of WWE management realize the ability of Bayley and Sasha Banks. Like, that match went on, I'm sure, if anybody else watching it, went on longer than we thought it should have. But under no, half glimpse of things that it should have gone. That match was amazing from start to finish. Based on the way they finished it, the way that they carried it on, based on whatever storylines from that match moving forwards. Bayley being the NXT champion is probably the strongest moment they could gain from that, but they went beyond just making Sasha Banks just being the oh my god, losing the champion. That was a legitimate match from start to finish, and Bayley did nothing but play it forwards and be able to capitalize on a situation that, ended up costing Bayley. That wasn't a match that was like a handing the title. It was more or less a match that was able to carry, everybody's momentum from, 20 or 30 people watching. But, Bayley, it wasn't just from the moves she did in the ring. I'm pretty sure from watching that, 100% I'm on Bayley's side.
I think it really comes down to the fact that, it is hard with a developmental system like NXT where you have a guy who comes up to the top and wins that belt and they're the top guy at NXT. Then you have to bring him to the main roster, but you also have to have him drop the belt at the same time. So that's a hard position to be in. So putting on a match like this is very good because it's convincing where, you're convinced that Bayley is good enough to be, in the class with these other three. But, at the same time, it doesn't make Sasha Banks look bad. And they said it multiple times on the show that the Divas, the women's division, they don't, the booking does not put them in the main event. They are the main event. And I think that stands true because, Bayley and Sasha Banks put on a fantastic match, especially for a co-main event, which they actually called a main event. But it was supposed to be a double main event, apparently. But it was back-to-back with Kevin Owens and Finn Balor, which is a rematch from Japan for the NXT Championship. And this was a ladder match. And it was pretty good. I actually thought that the first match...
Yeah, kind of that.
I thought the first match was better, to be honest, the one in Japan. But this was a good match as well. I think everybody pretty much knew and understood that Finn Balor was going to win. I don't even understand why they had a rematch. But I guess really it was just because they were in Brooklyn. But a good match overall. Really the whole show, like we said, was really good overall.
Well, in theory, you had to have Kevin Owens going against Finn Balor just to being able to give the rematch. And there's nobody else in NXT who even hold the candle to what Finn Balor and Kevin Owens can do with a ladder match. And I think anybody who watched that ladder match understood that could have gone either way, outside of the fact that they booked that. And Kevin Owens did an amazing job throughout that ladder match to not only bolster himself, but also give, Finn Balor his legitimate title breeze to say, oh yeah, I'm holding the title and going to take it forwards. Not at one point during that match did I feel like the two guys carrying the title were giving up anything whatsoever. Those two guys carried the utmost to, like, the final bell to show that Finn Balor and Kevin Owens were the two guys to carry NXT moving forwards, because they showed, outside of anything else, that NXT is just as much a title to carry as, say, the US title, the Intercontinental title. They tried to make it seem something outside of just being, a namesake on a Wikipedia page.
Right, exactly. I think really like it comes down to you have Kevin Owens sticking around in NXT, and you kind of think he might be sticking around there for too long, but putting on matches of this caliber doesn't make him look bad, so they can carry his momentum still towards matches like he had tonight at SummerSlam, which we should probably move into right now.
It's kind of surprising it's taken us that long to get into that, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, really, I feel like we have a lot to say about SummerSlam, but not a lot to say at the same time. But Sheamus and Orton kicked it off. Pretty mid card match. Relatively boring. I mean, really, I think it was just to get them both, some screen time. But Sheamus wins with a brogue kick.
And another brogue kick.
Yeah, 2 brogue kicks.
I think more or less like the Sheamus brogue kick throughout that match was just to help bolster his image in the event briefcase, but absolutely nobody gives him any kind of credit on carrying that briefcase. And I feel like this match against Orton was kind of like his coming out party and saying, yes, I carry the briefcase and there's a reason beyond that.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what lended itself to the match. I'm not saying that leads to anything forwards, but I feel like that's at least the legitimacy to him having that match.
Yeah, it's like they really needed to get him in the picture, especially if he's going to have the briefcase. I mean, it's like they gave it to him and then he was just, nowhere for a little while. And that's what it seemed like WWE was doing anyway, was just coasting to SummerSlam. And, you get to SummerSlam and then Sheamus really doesn't do very much. So, hopefully moving forward he is in the picture a little bit more. And then we saw a 4-way tag match, which, like, we were talking about it when we were watching. These things are really confusing because you have 2 legal men in a 4-way tag match.
Yeah.
And it's like, why can't you just have 4 guys active, 1 for each team,
That was the thing that kind of confused me, because I was not involved throughout this title match. The tail end of it was surprising to have 4 guys, or let me rephrase this, 4 teams involved, where you didn't include each end of the ring to this. It was very one-sided you pretty much knew who was going to win to start off the match, and there's no sense having, 3 other teams.
I mean, like, Los Matadores wasn't even in the match for, like, a good, 5 or more minutes. And, for a WWE tag match, you'd expect them all to be somewhat involved so that, you have some sort of, oh, hey, maybe they do have a chance. And really, I didn't get much of a sense of that at all. It was really just coming down to primetime players and New Day. And that's really all it's been. Lucha Dragons have been relegated to sort of a Los Matadores where, they put on a good match, they put on a show, but they're never, in the actual title picture itself. They're just there for the sake of being there.
Which is kind of depressing, because if anything, the Lucha Dragons have given off the best performance out of anybody else in the tag team division. So to see them, be relegated to that performance is kind of, I would say depressing, but you guys know what I mean.
Like, honestly, like, if it wasn't for the singles, like just the booking in WWE in general, I would say put Kalisto in a singles situation and just, because Sin Cara is just there to like be an accomplice to Kalisto, and it's like, he could do well in singles, but that WWE's booking's not going to be able to do anything with him, and they're going to relegate him to a Dolph Ziggler role and just be a mid card guy, and so essentially, anyway, New Day wins the tag team match, which I thought was cool. I like the New Day a lot, and they got a pretty decent reaction out there. So
Yeah, New York was firmly behind them. I mean, there was a point, I think it was after the match, where the crowd was clearly chanting New Day rocks, and the audio would mysteriously cut out for the rocks portion of the chant every time. It was pretty funny, I thought.
yeah, and it's weird because that like they're not trying to censor these people because that's part of the chant anyway, which was really weird because at the end of SummerSlam we saw a lot in the Lesnar match that was not PG, but we'll get to that later. Rusev and Ziggler was the next match, which was really, really fucking stupid because it ended in a double countout, which really just does not move the story in any sort of direction, which like is just a continuation of what's been happening already. The story has already not moved anywhere, so why at SummerSlam, your second biggest event of the, well, in quotations, second biggest event of the season, you have literally nothing happen with this feud? Like, where does it leave either of these guys?
Exactly that. Like, you look at it and you go, well, it's been 6 weeks since I've heard anything from Dolph Ziggler. And you've heard Rusev come to the ring, and Rusev's done quite admirably, like, trying to be semi-coherent, but, Rusev's joke. And the fact you have Dolph Ziggler go 6 weeks without saying anything cognizant, anything worthwhile to this, feud. The fact that they've let this go for SummerSlam is beyond me.
Yeah. I really expected more out of it. I expected Rusev to get a win because he needs to... they kind of killed his character off. He was this guy that's unbeatable, and then, all of a sudden you feed him to Cena and things are just going to go downhill. And now he's in this stupid, like, love, like, I don't know. It's such a stupid storyline just to fill out... It seems like it's just to fill out time on Raw and SmackDown. And it's really unnecessary, especially for two talents that are as good as both of these guys are. And it's really disappointing to me, especially with how high Ziggler was and how high Rusev was on the totem pole, half a year ago.
Well, look at it this way. When you go to Dolph Ziggler Space Survivor Series of last year, Dolph Ziggler was the guy carrying the pro-face movement. And all of a sudden you go 6 to 7 months later, you have Dolph Ziggler being the fall guy in some garbage Rusev movement, and you're like, what the fuck happened? Dolph Ziggler deserves more. Rusev deserves more, even so. Like, this movement, it needs to go beyond SummerSlam for it to carry any kind of weight. But I do not have WWE writing to even make that fact moving forwards.
Like, realistically, it's like, I understand it in a sense where you go to a show and you want to see Dolph Ziggler and Rusev, but it's like, I believe we mentioned it on one of the shows not too long ago, probably the last episode, but it's like, back in the Attitude Era, it's like the pace was just so much better, and you have even these guys that are in the mid-card just for the sake of being on TV, there's a story there. There's a reason you're watching these people. Like, there's a reason to keep coming back. There's a reason to watch Rusev and Ziggler, and right now I don't see any of that. Like, it really makes me not want to watch Rusev and Ziggler, which is sad because they're two guys that should be in matches that, we want to watch, we want to be invested in, and it's just not there.
Yeah, I think it comes down to a few weeks ago, that Rusev promo with the fish and the dog. It's basically a metaphor for this feud as a whole. It's a dead fish. It's just... Incidentally, that promo, I'd have to say, is one of my most underrated
like,
promos of the season. It's a fish.
They missed the entire opportunity to launch Dolph Ziggler against Rusev.
Yeah.
But they just waited on the dead space so long that there's no reason to give a shit about it today, because it carries no weight based on the storyline.
Yeah, there was just no movement in the storyline whatsoever for so long that, you know, when it culminates at SummerSlam, it doesn't matter who fucking wins. And that might be part of the reason they had a double count out, because who the fuck cares?
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. This feud is dead. This feud has killed Dolph Ziggler's heat. Rusev has avoided the brunt of the death of his heat just through sheer ability of his own. I think some of the promos in this feud have shown that the dude has immaculate comic timing. He's really got all the subtleties of professional wrestling down to a T, and I think that that's helped save him to an extent throughout this garbage feud. I mean, Lana hasn't really done anything of worth. She at least has the crowd behind her somewhat because she's gorgeous.
Dolph Ziggler stormed back onto the scene, and he's done absolutely nothing to get anybody on his side. So, Bill, as you said, like, understanding how to pull the group and, like, move them forwards, Dolph Ziggler has done absolutely none of that for this feud. It just seems like Rusev just has, like, a half-angry audience moving against a half-angry Dolph Ziggler audience. Typical Russian heel heat that matters in this scenario that really would carry this moving forwards.
Right. I mean, like I said, I'm just really disappointed. Like, it's bad that both of these guys could be in really any of these title pictures. You could put Rusev in the Intercontinental picture, and you could put Ziggler in a U.S. picture, and there's no reason for them not to be. And it's bad that they're relegated to a stupid storyline. Which, I mean, really, it's hard nowadays to not be in a stupid storyline because they're all pretty fucking stupid.
Yeah.
But, I mean, like I said, it's disappointing. And then Barrett and Stardust and Stephen Amell versus Neville, which was somewhat interesting. I was relatively impressed with Stephen Amell, like taking some bumps here and there. I mean, he didn't really look that bad in the ring. He was a little stiff at times, but you know, it was somewhat impressive for, I'm assuming, you know, he hadn't trained for very long for this match. But Neville and Stephen Amell take it. It was sort of the they wanted the whole comic book deal going for it, just because Amell's sort of the I don't even watch whatever show he's on, Arrow or whatever, but I know that, you know, I'm sure there were fans there that were interested in this match. I was not super invested in this match because I pretty much knew which way it was going to go.
Like, Amell pretty much straight on to the main fact that he was going to win the match. And, you know, it was pretty simple from start to finish. It wasn't necessarily like a great Bad News Barrett or a great Stardust performance. But it was probably a good, you know, 10-15 minute match where they allowed Stephen Amell to collect the pinfall victory. Like, there wasn't any of that match other than the fact that it was obvious that Stephen Amell won the victory through drawing his arrow back and, you know, gaining his pinfall. But outside of that, you know, it wasn't anything outside of the fact that it seemed like it involved any of our confrontation. That was a pretty good Stephen Amell fight, especially if you want to include Stephen Amell in a future confrontation with Stardust. But outside of that, you know, he carried it on well.
Yeah, I think Neville looked really good too, and Neville always looks good, but he had a couple moves that he hadn't shown before. I don't remember. He did a corkscrew sort of almost like a red arrow from the middle rope. That was pretty cool. But I mean, overall, it was, you know, it's another one of those filler matches, and then we ended up doing the Intercontinental match after that, which, I mean, was pretty much we all pretty much knew it was going to be Ryback defending, because I really can't see either of these guys holding the Intercontinental title. Maybe The Miz, but I mean, goddamn, if Big Show would have taken that, I would have just been so pissed off, especially after after what we saw the rest of the night. I mean, imagine if Big Show wins the Intercontinental title, and then we have the rest of SummerSlam go down the way it did.
I can't. I don't even want to
Yeah.
think about it. It just makes me
Yeah.
angry at this point.
So anyway, Ryback wins. Not much to say.
It was about a wash.
Yeah.
Nothing nobody was expecting.
There's a lot of pins back and forth and breaking them up and this and that. I think what happened was Big Show's knockout punch, and then Miz got, it was Miz that got knocked down. Big Show got thrown out of the picture somehow, and Ryback got the cover. And then we moved on to Wyatt and Harper versus Reigns and Ambrose, which I personally picked Wyatt and Harper in this match because I think that would have worked out a lot better. I don't think Reigns and Ambrose need the win as much as Wyatt and Harper do. It's really like, it's kind of ridiculous how low Wyatt and Harper still are, and because Bray Wyatt is definitely at the talent level where he deserves to be higher on the card, and Luke Harper is too. And I don't think people really understand how good either of these guys are.
Well, like, if anything, if you were to take apart this matchup, it definitely should have been Luke Harper and Luke Harper and Bray Wyatt collecting the pinfall. There was absolutely no point at which during this match, Dean Ambrose or Roman Reigns seemed to have the upper hand. There were definitely points at which either character definitely, like, could have garnered hope. And outside of, like, a heel turn for Roman Reigns or Dean Ambrose, like, neither of that happened. We were expecting that to be, like, a major focus of this match, and none of that came to fruition. So it was like a really awkward match outside of anybody who had some kind of, like, focus.
Yeah, it was really, it almost seemed pointless just because, there was a lot of people talking on social media about maybe a Reigns or an Ambrose turn, and neither of them happened, and it just sort of killed off, whatever the match had in store. I don't even remember most of the match because I was focused on, hey, when's this match going to end? Or when is Reigns going to turn? When's Ambrose going to turn? And nothing happened, and it was just another dry spot in, what was otherwise a relatively just boring-ass SummerSlam.
Yeah, that was the story of the match as a whole, and really it was a microcosm for the entire pay-per-view. I mean, you had your talk of either Dean or Roman turning on the other. There were some rumors floating around of a third Wyatt member debuting to fill the void left by the injured Eric Rowan. And so, it's building up at the end. You've got the baby faces looking dominant in the very run-up to the finish. And you're like, well, this is a little out of the ordinary. This seems about like when you're going to see some interference or some twist coming.
Yeah.
And then there's just nothing. You have a little flurry and then finishers and the finish.
Yeah, and at the end when they're both standing there, it's like you expect somebody to turn, and it just doesn't. It was just bad that nothing happened.
Especially when you see Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns are next to each other, and you see probably Dean undo his medical tape for whatever it is, the left and right hand. All of a sudden you go, well, this is probably the moment where one and two turn on one another. But that did not happen. So you see these two guys move forwards on WWE calendars, and you're like, are Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns like the go-to tag team, or are they just like a coincidental unit, be a tag team unit? But on the same bonus, it's like, at some point one has to turn on the other, and it's hard to probably join their group because of that simple fact. At some point, they cannot be teammates anymore.
like you want him to turn so bad, but it's like really at this point the only person I could see turning is Ambrose, because you got Reigns who has like he has the John Cena effect already, where he already has people that consider him a heel, and now you got but he has the younger fan base that is already in love with the guy, and it's like Dean Ambrose realistically is still at a spot where you know people could still get behind a heel Dean Ambrose, and I think Dean Ambrose could pull off a heel Dean Ambrose. Realistically, it's like it's kind of like Austin, where we've made a lot of comparisons to Austin with Dean Ambrose, but it's kind of like Austin, where Austin realistically was a heel at the time, but he was a sort of an anti-hero, and I don't see why they couldn't go anywhere with that with Dean Ambrose, and it's really just a missed opportunity, just like a lot of things are with this company right now, and it's just I think we're getting to the point where we're so upset that there's so many opportunities right in front of their face, and none of them are being capitalized upon.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, like, you've got Dean Ambrose, who I think everybody knows would make an absolutely fantastic heel. You've got Roman Reigns, who I do tend to believe would make a pretty good heel as well. But turning Dean Ambrose heel in front of that crowd against Roman Reigns would have been an absolute disaster. You would have had the biggest pop in months for Ambrose turning on Reigns. He would have gotten over as hell as a face for it. And I don't think you can have Ambrose do anything sadistic enough to get that Brooklyn crowd to boo him in that situation. Roman Reigns, I feel like, personally needs the heel turn more just for his development as a character and to finally get that other sector of the fan base behind him and accept him.
I think realistically, it's like this crowd was not dead at all by any means, and I think realistically, it's like a Reigns or an Ambrose turn would have blown that shit up, and realistically, I think really the Brooklyn crowd for NXT was definitely better, but I mean, like I said, you still could blow up this crowd with either of those turns. And it's just I can't even stress enough how stupid it is to not take either of those routes. It's like you come to this fork in the road and you're just gonna go the worst possible way. And
Well,
we keep saying too, though, it's like they're just gonna take the worst ideas and put them into action, and they do it, and they continue to do it.
well, like Seth, like the way you say it is like they're pretty much binging on the two best opportunities, and the two best opportunities right now would be either Dean Ambrose turning heel or Roman Reigns turning heel. And all they have to do is immediately say that, but their fan base immediately erupts. So it's obviously something that's going to happen in the next month or two. It's just the fact of being like too ahead of that. And I feel like Dean Ambrose is going to turn face moving forward, Roman Reigns turning heel. But I feel like it's just the thing, like, we're too far ahead of that based on what they're projecting forwards for some kind of coverage.
Yeah, that might be true, but like, and now it's like you don't see like the Raw after a pay-per-view nowadays isn't as big as it used to be, and like my expectations for something that should have happened at SummerSlam happening tomorrow night on Raw or tonight when this airs, it's not going to, the chances of it are much lower, and it's because the shows that are on TV now, they don't put much effort into them, and it's because they like to drag these things out to the WWE network, and it's I can't use it enough, man. It's disappointing.
Well, that's entirely the issue. It's the fact that we can create some kind of WWE fan base, but the issue is if we had some kind of conglomerate issue, we could talk about the issue probably in 1,500, 2,500 fans, But the issue is it takes, 1,200 fans just to become relevant in a, we're going to get together on a Facebook group, that it's hard to reach the people who have any kind of say. So it's interesting to see what we can do to create a cohesive fan base that says, oh, upper echelon, this is exactly what we want. This is what we want to see.
I think it's difficult to understand where the creative team looks on social media or like just on the internet in general to get an idea of what their fan base is looking for, because we know that wherever we're posting things, they ain't looking, because they have not taken any of our ideas.
Yeah.
That's for damn sure.
Well, in order to do that,
Pretty
they'd have
much.
to be using ideas, period.
Right. They would actually have to have ideas. And like even when, like we said before, when you have these 4-way tag matches, you don't have 4 guys in the ring at the same time because they don't want to plan out the match. They don't want to creatively book this match. And it's much easier to deal with a one-on-one situation and then just have these random clueless tags, like other teams tagging in other teams for no reason. And they said it in the middle of that tag match that, the realistically 2 of the same team could be active and pin each other and win and lose. It's like, what the hell is that? What are you talking about? Like, you're saying that if Kofi Kingston's active for the New Day, like Kalisto can come over for the Lucha Dragons and get tagged in by Big E, and then Big E takes the pinfall from Kofi, and the New Day wins. Like, how does that make any sense? Like, why would that even be booked that way? And that wasn't even the only match that was like that. We had the Divas match that was like that too. And actually, I'm going to skip the Cena-Rollins match really quick to talk about that Divas match, because it's the same situation. You got 2 people active in the ring at the same time, and it really just doesn't make any sense to me when you can have 1 from each team.
Well, what did not make sense with that match is the fact that it should have been a Divas Elimination. What it was a, tag team elimination match. And they did everything outside their limits to make sure that Sasha Banks was not a credible opportunist in that match. And watching that match just, kind of devalued the fact that we just saw 3 to 4 women just erupt on the roster as actual credible threats, and we just saw them become fucking garbage in this tag team. I feel like those women deserve anything over anything. Like, an opportunity to say, like, they are the next opportunity in WWE television. Whether or not they were included in the pinfall decision, like, those teams, I'm sorry, I want them on, like, the next WWE pay-per-view. Because those are the women who are going to lead this charge forwards. Whether or not Becky Lynch doesn't deserve this, or Sasha Banks, those are the women who are going to make WWE television the next month matter way more than Brock Lesnar can ever do.
See, and I like the idea of... I somewhat like the idea of the teams, but I hate the idea of the teams at the same time, because it's like you have... they do have they have such a big roster, and they act like they don't. They act like they have no talent, and it's like, why... You almost don't need to put these girls on teams. You could have 2, maybe even 3 Divas matches on Raw, or throw one on SmackDown. And it's the fact that they act like their roster is so shallow when it isn't. It's just extremely underutilized. And I think, and Tim, you posted an article earlier in our chat about like a rumor about John Cena going to creative about Nikki Bella, and saying, oh, maybe we should do this whole like team thing.
It was about losing the title, and the whole idea of the team thing was to take any positivity away from the Bellas and allow them to, be the third positive group, but not necessarily lead the charge forwards. It's like, are you serious? Have you met Paige, Charlotte, and Becky Lynch? Have you met, Sasha Banks, Naomi, and Tamina? Like, the fact that anybody could see them, they would not be legitimate challengers to any singles or doubles or triples title in WWE. Like, John Cena, I'm sorry, I love you to death, but how can you for once side against this? Like, this is a situation in which we're going to re-event the women's understanding of wrestling. And if any of this is true to John Cena, or like ruining the way that we understand like divas today, fuck John Cena. I'm sorry, but
And like, even if it isn't John Cena though, like, you're doing this wrong, because now you have, like, we all know it's increasingly obvious that you want Nikki Bella to be, the longest reigning champion, and you're putting these three teams in this situation because now you're getting yourself out of Nikki Bella having to defend her title against these girls that are coming in from NXT.
well, exactly that. It's like, what's your outlying point? Is saying like Nikki Bella is the best WWE diva ever? Or do you want to try to create a scenario where, the three women joining the group matter as much as anybody else who's been in the group, staying against the idea that, divas need to be a pushover? All of a sudden we have 7, 9, 11 women who are willing to step forward and prove their legitimacy to any title. And all of a sudden you want to say, oh, you need to be as good as Nikki Bella? I'm sorry, Nikki Bella is great for the Divas division, but if she's not defending the title, then her limit is shorter than anybody else.
Yeah, it completely discredits the fact that she's carrying it for that long. So we're running out of time, but I want to go to Rollins and Cena really quick, which was like a good match overall. And I thought, like, it was really interesting that Rollins came out with all white, Cena came out with his new merch, but the match itself was really good, and it came down to like a really bad ending. And
Oh my god.
I mean, how do you have? I mean, I understand that you want Jon Stewart to host SummerSlam, but he shouldn't play a factor. He shouldn't be a factor in a match that is for both the WWE World Heavyweight Championship and the U.S. Championship at the same time. So essentially, if you didn't watch, Jon Stewart comes in towards the end of the match and basically brings in a steel chair. He's like torn between hitting Cena and Rollins, which I thought he should have hit Rollins realistically.
Yeah, it made no sense why he'd be thinking about hitting Cena.
It would have made so much more sense considering Rollins has been on the Daily Show multiple times acting all heel towards Jon Stewart. And now you got Jon Stewart who hits John Cena, and Rollins takes the pin, and now Rollins has 2 belts.
It's done nothing other than to help Seth Rollins, like, immediate the fact that he carries the WWE Heavyweight title. He just beat John Cena. Okay, that's great, but he also has the secondary fact that he's carrying the U.S. title. And I know moving forward we want to try to connect both WWE Heavyweight legitimacy to the rest of the titles, but Seth perfectly. Like, Seth Rollins, you cannot look at him and say he's doing anything wrong. Seth Rollins is the immediate carrier of WWE title, and Seth Rollins is doing nothing but being the positive role model. As much as I hate to say this, he's doing his entire job perfectly perfect.
I thought it was interesting too that Rollins was basically playing the baby face in this match, and it's like I just feel like Rollins deserves a clean win. I mean, he's still carrying out this sort of like role where he never really definitively wins anything, and you're stretching it out even more, especially against a guy like John Cena. That could be a very credible win for Seth Rollins to win clean over John Cena and take that U.S. title away from him. And it just really didn't make any sense for that to happen, for this ending to happen.
From a booking perspective, it's not even that it doesn't make sense. It flies in the face of logical booking. I mean, you have your U.S. title challenge that John Cena had. You were hoping somebody was going to get the rub of eventually beating him, but that's not happening anymore. And who do you have turn heel? Who is the crux of the finish of this match? It is your celebrity guest host, Jon Stewart. Now, what is the point of having somebody turn heel and screw someone over if not only are they not an active wrestler, so they can't really get their comeuppance, but it's a celebrity guest wrestler, so you can't afford to have them take the risks of getting the comeuppance. If it was a Stephen Amell or someone, that's a little bit different because they actually have some athleticism. They've proven they can fly in the ring. They might have something, be able to take a few shots or something, but it's Jon Stewart. He's 50 years old plus. He's a comedian. There is no chance of Cena getting one back over on him to get his comeuppance, get the fucking heat back on him. It made no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, I just didn't see any direction for it. There's no where they can go. Like down the line, there's literally nowhere this storyline can go down the line. And like we said, I think maybe Rollins, I think we said it before the show, but I think maybe Rollins can defend the U.S. title eventually, but there's almost no sense in just the whole Jon Stewart thing. I thought it was really stupid. But Kevin Owens and Cesaro, we can talk about a little bit. Owens, I think we pretty much all expected Owens to win after the Finn Balor match. But I mean, really good match, but not like, it obviously wasn't a highlight. It was another, we actually forgot about it up until the point where we realized there was more than a half hour to go before the end of the show, which actually ended 15 minutes early. But Owens wins. And decent match. I'd say give it a watch. I mean, really, you might as well watch SummerSlam if you got the network, but it's like there's nothing really extremely exciting. But I thought Undertaker and Lesnar, which was the main event, was really good as a match. But another ending that was just really confusing and unnecessary. Basically what happened was Lesnar had Undertaker in a Kimura lock. Taker taps, referee doesn't see it, apparently. And
Timekeeper does see it. He rings the bell.
Timekeeper rings the bell. Keeps going on, and Undertaker defeats Lesnar with his submission, the Hell's Gate or whatever they call it. And I thought it was really stupid. I mean, I guess what they wanted to do was keep Lesnar looking strong, which, I mean, really, he's going to look strong anyway. But I thought it was kind of a nonsensical reason to give Undertaker the win. He needed the win anyway. What is it going to hurt Lesnar to take the loss to Undertaker at this point? It was just really, to me, it was confusing.
Yeah, like, giving The Undertaker the loss for that pay-per-view was just... I guess my immediate resolution was, what are you going to do with Undertaker moving forward? Is it going to be something that you and Brock are going to resolve in the next 6 or 7 months? Or is it a Brock win and then give up on everything?
Yeah, I thought the match itself, I was really impressed by it. I mean, it's probably easily Taker's best match probably since the year before losing the streak. Might have been better than that, I'm not sure, but it was really unique in that they almost worked the match shoot style. They tried to simulate an actual UFC fight in parts of it.
Yeah, they did have parts like that,
And
definitely.
that's something you see a little bit of that over in Japanese wrestling in certain promotions. Not even so much anymore in recent times, but that was a taste of something different, something that you rarely, if ever, see in WWE. So the match itself was good until the fuck finish, which was not executed well at all, as evidenced by the complete dead reaction of the crowd as the show was going
Yeah,
out.
they were done.
They were clearly deflated by it. I think they understood what was happening and they just were not having it.
Look, I think we all agree that, like, realistically, a lot of these matches do end up being really good. As far as the in-ring work goes, it comes down to the finishes and the storyline implications, and there's nothing there for those. And I think really that's the biggest flaw that WWE has is their creative team, and they got to get over that hurdle, and they have to do it soon because it's just it's not entertaining to watch, and there's no reason to keep coming back to watch Raw, to watch SmackDown. And really, I think at this point, even though NXT's been relatively, it's fallen off the edge, NXT is still topping WWE in most ways. I mean, I don't know. Overall, I mean, what do you think out of 10? What do you give SummerSlam?
6 out of 10.
I'm gonna go with a I'd say 5.5. 5.5.
I don't know, I think I'd have to go with a strong 4 or a light 5. I mean, the in-ring work was there, but that's nothing out of the ordinary for WWE programming. The booking was atrocious. There were some atrocious finishes in there. It was almost a highlight reel of everything wrong with WWE.
Yeah, your in-ring work can only go so far. I mean, you can put on really good matches, but as long as there's no story there, there's nothing behind it. There's no reason for you to want to watch. There's no reason for you to care about who's gonna win. And Lucha Underground puts on great matches, but they also have good storylines behind it. And it's really what WWE lacks, and that's the bottom line. I think that's the way we're gonna close out season 2. It's somewhat of a grim close to the season, but it's been shitty, like the last couple months. And with Lucha Underground's off season, it's gonna be rough down the stretch, but we're gonna keep bringing it to you. Season 3 is coming. We'll hopefully change things up maybe a little bit, and we'll try and not be as structured. I feel like that's a little bit of a vice that we have, but I think we'll be ready for season 3, and it should be coming soon. Maybe next week, maybe the week after. But keep your eyes out on open on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. I mean, we're always relatively active on Twitter when there's shows. So follow us, like us, subscribe, and we'll see you next season.
Same.
Same.